MSPs are returning to Holyrood tomorrow with their minds firmly focused on May's Scottish Parliament election. The pressure is on the Labour leader Anas Sarwar, who's insisting he'll defy the odds to become the nation's next First Minister. After making a speech in Glasgow, he joined us in the studio. Anas Sarwar, you say you want to take on what you call the noisy minority holding Scotland back. Who are they?
Look, I think the perfect example of the noisy minority holding our country back is this SNP government that's not interested in improving people's lives every single day, not interested in fixing our NHS, not interested in improving our schools, and instead want to go back to talking. Well, they're not, and John Swinney's made that perfectly clear.
You can argue they're not doing it, but you can't really say they're not interested.
John Swinney's been really clear. The election next year for him is, in his words, about securing independence, even though he knows it's not going to be an independence election, it's going to be a change the government election. But that's just one example. The other example is noisy minorities who hold back or campaign against, for example, new houses when we have a housing emergency. The council officials who knock back planning applications because they can't be bothered doing the work.
So what would you do to them?
The health board bosses, for example. Well, we're going to make it very clear that culture has to change and leadership comes from the top, and we're going to hold people to account. For example, the health board bosses in Glasgow who would rather hire spin doctors to hide their failures when there was infections happening for children and tragically lives being lost, rather than investing in the truth, patients, treatments and doctors.
Would you be tough enough to get rid of them?
Absolutely, and I've already been really clear that we have a bureaucracy and management heavy NHS where we create layer after layer of bureaucracy, pen pushers and managers, when in actual fact we should strip back the number of chief execs, strip back the number of managers, strip back the number of finance directors, and instead have more nurses, more doctors and more treatments. You
say the Scottish Government you lead will end the soft touch, turn the other way approach of the SNP. What does that mean?
Well, I'll give you one example. Shoplifting in our country in some communities has almost doubled. You have yobs who are doing heinous crimes in their communities, spreading fear with the hard-working majority in those communities. You've got them shoplifting in shops, and right now we have a soft-touch approach. I'm going to be not on the side of the yob that's doing the shoplifting or hammering communities. I want to be on the side of the shopkeeper who's working really hard. Well, we're going to make sure our police officers aren't stuck in A&E units right now because of SNP failure. We're going to make sure they're not stuck in courtrooms right now where over 90% of them don't end up giving evidence, and instead we're going to make sure they're on the streets investigating crimes and going after people rather than letting the shopkeeper suffer or individual communities suffer.
But what are you going to do to these yobs, as you call them? Are you going to lock them up?
Well, there's going to be
in the already overcrowded prison system?
No, look, not every crime is going to result in someone going to prison, but there still has to be accountability and punishment for crime if we are going to make sure we're on the side of the hard-working majority in our country.
So what are you going to do to them?
Well, there's a whole host of us. One, we can investigate the crimes. Right now, if you speak to shopkeepers across the country, the vast majority of these cases aren't even investigated. We don't even chap the door of the people that we know are the repeat offenders of shoplifting. We're going to chap the doors, we're going to investigate the crimes, we're going to prosecute, and we're going to make sure we're on the side of the communities that are suffering, not a soft touch approach from the SNP.
A year ago, you looked like a shoe-in for Bute House to be the next First Minister. What's gone wrong?
Well, I've never believed that I'm a shoe-in. You can see, Colin, you've been covering Scottish politics for a very, very long time, and you've been covering the Scottish Labour Party for a very, very long time. And you'll know that the Scottish Labour Party I took over was struggling for survival, and we managed to come back, get back on the pitch, challenge the SNP, get ourselves back into second place.
Since you've taken over, you've kind of gone up, now you've gone back down again.
Well, if you actually look at the stats, the gap that exists between ourselves and the SNP right now is the same gap that was this far out from the general election, and we went on to beat the SNP convincingly. And I think it's safe to say lots has happened in the last year.
But in the last year since that general election, you've gone down about 10 points in the polls.
Well, as I say, this far out from the general election, we were 12 points behind.
You're going to get back up another 10, do you reckon, in the next 8 months?
We are going to get back up in the polls, and we're going to do what we did in the Hamilton by-election and indeed the recent local Barrhead by-election, where we're going to prove the pundits and the pollsters wrong, the political commentators wrong. Don't take any offence to that, Colin. And we're going to prove that this country wants to go in a new direction. They want to get rid of the SNP.
And maybe they do. But they don't necessarily want to do it with you. I mean, Sir Keir Starmer's on -42 in polling in Scotland. You're on -18.
Well, a good point to be made there, Colin, which is People have decided they want the SNP to lose. I absolutely believe that. I got that from the message in Hamilton. I got that from the message
exactly
in
what
Barhead.
Reform and what Nigel Farage was saying last week. Are you going to work with him to get rid of the SNP?
So let me finish. People want the SNP to lose. Reform can't win. All they can do is create noise, and all they can do is help the SNP win. The choice next year is going to be simple.
But they say they don't want it. They say they want to stop the SNP, which means working with you. Would you work with them?
What Nigel Farage says is irrelevant. He doesn't care about Scotland. He doesn't understand Scotland. He's not standing
not that far behind you in the polls.
He's not standing to be First Minister. He said that himself. He's not going to take part, for example, in the TV debates for the Scottish election. And you've seen already, he's already questioned my Scottish identity. I understand Scotland more than folk like Nigel Farage do. Instead, what we're going to demonstrate is the choice next year is a pretty straightforward one. It's either going to be a third decade of the SNP with John Swinney as First Minister, or a new direction for Scotland with a Scottish Labour government and me as First Minister.
Briefly, you think Scotland's stuck. The Chancellor said today she feels that Britain is stuck. Now, a lot of people think that that's because of her national insurance increases and, you know, the dithering over the pensioners' winter fuel payment and actually increasing fuel bills in the UK.
Well, again, Colin, the election next year is not going to decide who the UK government is. It's not going to decide who the Prime Minister is.
But the election last year didn't. People are already fed up with them.
It is going to decide who the next Scottish Government is and who the next First Minister is. And are we not going to talk about the 900,000 people, almost 900,000 people that are on an NHS waiting list because of the SNP? Are we not going to talk about the fact that our schools are falling down the international league tables?
I think we're going to be talking about that an awful lot over
Are we not going to talk about the fact that shoplifting is doubled and police officers aren't being seen on streets and people don't feel safe and secure? Are we not going to talk about the fact that we have a housing emergency in our country, the responsibility of the SNP?
One thing you haven't done is you haven't told me what you do about any of these things.
You've not asked me, now you've asked me, I'll answer the question.
You haven't told me about any of these things.
Now you've asked me the question.
You've had plenty of opportunity to tell me about your policies. You haven't given me any.
Now you've asked the question, I'm happy to answer it. We are going to end the ATM rush for a GP. We're going to clear the backlogs.
Now, you told us that at your party conference. You couldn't tell us how you were going to do it.
And we're going to restructure our NHS. Well, I did actually tell you how we're going to do it. Well, I'll tell you now. I'll tell you again now. One is we're going to use capacity wherever it exists. Right now, health boards are not allowing patients to go, or very rarely allowing patients to go to other parts of the country, even if they can get their treatment faster. We're going to stop that. The money's going to follow the patient. Secondly, we'll use capacity wherever it exists to clear the backlogs. Third, we're going to make sure we're clamping down on the fact that more and people having to go to the private sector. Fourth, we're going to renegotiate the GP contract to make sure people can see a GP and we end the ATM rush for a GP.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that, because that's been tried before.
We're going to restructure the NHS so we don't have 50 boards for a population of 5.5 million people. You wanted the specific columns, I'm giving you the specifics.
I'm going to have to move on though, because the biggest issue at Holyrood, and MSPs are coming back tomorrow, has been the arrest and charges with suspended Labour MSP Colin Smyth. What did you know and when about that?
Look, it's a deeply shocking situation, and of course it's deeply distressful for all of us in the Labour Party, but distressing for people right across the parliamentary estate, and actually many people distressed across the country. And obviously I'm limited in what I can say given the fact that this is an ongoing police investigation. But we became aware of the seriousness of the allegations on the 18th, and we suspended Colin Smyth on the same day. He is now an independent MSP. There may well be other questions that you may have, Colin, but they are probably questions more appropriately pointed towards the police or indeed the parliamentary authorities.
How did you feel about it? You've worked with him for years now. He's been on your front bench at times. He was a party general secretary.
Shocking, devastating, but again I emphasise this is an ongoing police investigation. I don't want to be in any situation to prejudice that police investigation, and that investigation has to run its course. But he is no longer a Labour MSP. He's an independent MSP, and questions about his future conduct and his role in the Parliament is best posed to the Parliament.
Now, Westminster's back today already, ahead of the Scottish Parliament. Do you think that the suspended Alloa and Grangemouth MP, Brian Leishman, should be brought back into the party?
Look, Brian Leishman is Labour to his core. We want it to work for Brian, and we want it to work for the Labour Party. And I hope we can find a situation where everyone recognises the importance of teamwork, particularly going into a Scottish general election next year. That's what we are focused on.
So do you want him back in the party?
Well, look, there are some
he was suspended.
There are some individual issues around discipline, around teamwork. I think if we can all work as one team, if we can respect the importance of discipline, then I hope we can resolve these.
One of his biggest disappointments is that the £200 million pledged by the Labour government for helping create new jobs at Grangemouth, nothing's been seen from it yet. There's no sign of it.
Well, I think that's an ongoing frustration, the fact that
Are you frustrated?
Look, we've had Project Willow. I know from ministers like Michael Shanks, they share that frustration. We've had Project Willow, a good and important piece of work. We've had the commitment of the £200 million from the National Wealth Fund, an important commitment and a really important piece of work.
And not a sign of a penny of it.
But what we need to see now is that investment being realised so we can create jobs and demonstrate the future viability of that site.
Any sign of that before a Scottish election?
It's urgent. It needs to happen within weeks. I don't think we should be waiting months.
Anas Sarwar, thanks for joining us
My pleasure.
tonight.
Thank you.